The expensive restaurant buzzed with conversation as I sat there, watching my mother-in-law, Eleanor, hold court at my husband Mark's birthday dinner. She'd insisted on hosting at Le Maison, the fanciest French restaurant in town, claiming it was her treat, just like everything else she claimed to pay for. I picked at my untouched salmon, my stomach churning as I thought about the credit card statement I'd reviewed just hours before. 6 months of minimum payments, growing interest, and the constant stress of debt that was supposedly taken care of. "Sarah, darling," Eleanor's voice cut through my thoughts. "You've barely touched your food. I hope you're not worried about the cost. You know I always take care of everything." There it was again, that subtle reminder of her fictional generosity, always delivered with an audience present. Tonight it was Mark's siblings, their spouses, and Eleanor's country club friends, her favorite witnesses to her maternal sacrifices. I forced a smile. Just saving room for the birthday cake. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. He'd always accepted his mother's version of reality, never questioning the disconnect between her grand announcements and our struggling bank account. "Speaking of taking care of things," Eleanor continued, lifting her wine glass, "I think it's time for a toast." The table fell silent as she stood, elegant in her designer dress and perfectly coiffed silver hair. Eleanor Matthews never missed an opportunity for a performance. "To my beloved son on his 35th birthday," she began. "I'm so proud of the man you've become, and I'm especially glad I could help you start this year debt-free by taking care of those nasty credit cards." My hand tightened around my phone in my lap. Mark beamed at his mother, while his sister Jane shot me a questioning look. "Mom, you really shouldn't have," Mark said, his voice full of genuine gratitude that broke my heart. "Nonsense. What kind of mother would I be if I let my children struggle?" Eleanor's voice carried across the restaurant. $40,000 is nothing compared to your happiness." The couple at the next table looked over, impressed by the casual mention of such a sum. Eleanor lived for moments like these. "When exactly did you make this generous payment, Eleanor?" I heard myself ask, my voice steadier than I felt. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, a few months ago. You know how these things work, Sarah. Sometimes it takes time to show up on statements." 6 months. I pressed, pulling out my phone. "Because I have our credit card app right here, and the balance is still very much present." The table went silent. Mark's brother David stopped mid-bite, his fork hovering in the air. "Sarah," Mark whispered, "what are you doing?" Eleanor's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. "Perhaps we should discuss financial matters privately, dear." "Why?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly in the hushed restaurant. "You just announced to everyone that you paid our debts. I'm simply asking for clarification." "Mom?" Mark's voice held a note of confusion. "What's going on?" Eleanor took a long sip of wine, buying time. "The payment must have been delayed. You know how banks can be." "That's interesting," I said, opening my banking app. "Because I have something else to show you, Mark. Remember that investment account your mom said she opened for us?" Eleanor's wine glass clattered against her plate. "This is hardly the time or place." I agreed. I cut in. "Which is why I tried to discuss this privately with you last week, and the week before, and last month. But you kept brushing me off, telling me I didn't understand high finance." Mark looked between his mother and me, his birthday dinner forgotten. "What investment account?" I turned my phone screen toward him. "The one your mother said she opened with the $40,000 she claimed she used to pay our debt. Except there is no account, but there is this." The screen showed a transfer receipt, $40,000 from Eleanor's personal account to something called Elite Lifestyle Management. "What's Elite Lifestyle Management?" Mark asked. "It's a luxury travel company," Jane suddenly spoke up. Everyone turned to look at her. "I saw the charges when I was helping Mom with her taxes last month. She's been booking first-class trips and spa retreats." Eleanor's face flushed red. "I work hard. I deserve to treat myself." "With money you told us was paying off our debts?" I asked quietly, "money that had Mark thanking you for months while we kept making minimum payments and watching our credit score drop." The waiter approached with the birthday cake, took one look at the tension around the table, and wisely retreated. "Mark," Eleanor turned to her son, her voice trembling slightly, "surely you don't believe these accusations, after everything I've done for you?" But Mark was staring at my phone screen. at the date and amount of the transfer that matched exactly what his mother had claimed to use for our debts. What else? He asked softly, still looking at the screen. What else have you lied about, Mom? I placed my hand over his. There's more? A lot more. But maybe we should continue this somewhere more private. Eleanor stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to sit here and be accused. Sit down, Mom. Mark's voice was firm, surprising everyone, including himself. We're going to talk about this, all of it, starting with where my $40,000 really went. As Eleanor slowly sank back into her chair, I could see her carefully constructed narrative beginning to crumble. The birthday dinner had become something else entirely, the night the truth finally came to light. The birthday cake sat forgotten in the kitchen as we moved this uncomfortable family meeting to Eleanor's house. Her sprawling Victorian home, which she always claimed to have bought with her wise investments, loomed over us like another one of her lies waiting to be exposed. I have everything documented, I said, pulling out a folder I kept in my car for months, waiting for this moment. Every time you claimed to help us financially, every investment you said you made on our behalf. Eleanor sat rigidly on her antique sofa, her perfect posture a stark contrast to her crumbling composure. Mark's siblings, Jane and David, flanked their mother while their spouses stood awkwardly near the doorway. March 2023. I began, you told Mark you were paying our property taxes as a gift. $8,000. I did intend to, Eleanor started. July 2023. I continued, you announced at David's wedding that you've started a college fund for our future children. $25,000. The market was volatile. December 2023, you claimed to have paid off our car loan as a present. $15,000. Mark's hands were shaking as he looked through the bank statements I'd gathered. None of these payments ever happened. But the money came from somewhere, Mom. Where did it go? Jane stepped forward, clutching her tablet. I think I can answer that. As the family's accountant, she had access to more information than Eleanor probably realized. Mom's been maintaining 3 separate apartments in different cities. Eleanor's face went pale. Jane, don't you dare. One in Miami, one in Las Vegas, and one in New York, Jane continued, her voice trembling. All under different names. David let out a low whistle. Different names? Mom, what's going on? Eleanor stood up, smoothing her designer dress with trembling hands. You don't understand. Your father's life insurance was never going to be enough to maintain our lifestyle. I had to diversify. Diversify into what? Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper. She's been running a dating scam, Jane said quietly. Those apartments, they're meeting places for wealthy older men she meets online. She promises them investment opportunities, takes their money, and disappears. The room fell silent. The elegant Eleanor Matthews, pillar of society and self-proclaimed financial genius, was nothing more than a con artist. The money you claimed to give us, I said, realization dawning, was all just part of your cover story. You needed to look generous, successful. I did it for this family, Eleanor suddenly shouted. To maintain our reputation, our status. Our reputation. Mark stood up, anger finally breaking through his shock. You've been scamming people and lying to us, using us as props in your cons. Those men were wealthy enough to afford the loss, Eleanor said dismissively, and you all benefited from the lifestyle I provided. Except we didn't, I countered. We've been drowning in debt while you play fairy godmother with money that never existed. Do you know what it's done to our credit? To our plans for starting a family? Eleanor turned to Mark, her last defense crumbling. Darling, surely you understand. After your father died, I had to do something. Dad left us comfortable, Jane interrupted. I've seen the insurance payout. You didn't have to do any of this. But the country club membership, the charity galas, the reputation we've built. We're all built on lies, Mark finished. Every birthday dinner, every gift, every time you swooped in to save us financially, it was all just part of your scam. I pulled out one final document. The FBI is already investigating elite lifestyle management. That's why I started digging deeper. They're looking into a series of investment frauds targeting wealthy older men. Eleanor sank back onto the sofa, her carefully maintained facade finally shattering completely. You've ruined everything, she whispered. No, Mom, David said firmly. You did that yourself. Mark took out his phone. I'm calling the family lawyer. We need to know where we stand legally, how much exposure we have to your schemes. And we need to start making things right, Jane added, starting with all the debts he claimed to pay but didn't. Eleanor looked around the room, at the children she'd entangled in her web of lies, at the daughter-in-law who'd exposed her, at the life she'd built on deception. For the first time, she looked her age, tired, scared, and very, very alone. "Happy birthday to me," Mark said bitterly, pulling out his phone to make the call that would start the process of unraveling his mother's elaborate fraud. 3 months after the birthday dinner that changed everything, I sat in our living room reviewing the final report from the forensic accountant. Eleanor's web of deception had been even more intricate than we'd imagined. Over $2 million, I told Mark as he came in from work. That's the total amount she scammed from 12 different men over the past 5 years. He sank into the couch beside me, loosening his tie. And she used our names, our stories, to make herself seem legitimate. The FBI investigation had revealed Eleanor's method. She would show potential victims photos of her children's homes, cars, and lifestyles, all supposedly funded by her investment expertise. She'd even created fake thank you cards from us for financial gifts that never existed. "The hearing is tomorrow," I reminded him gently. "Are you ready?" Eleanor had agreed to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for helping recover what money she could. The elegant Victorian house had been sold, her luxury apartments liquidated, and her designer wardrobe auctioned off. "Did you know," Mark said, staring at the ceiling, "that every birthday since Dad died, I actually believed she was helping us? I kept waiting for our financial situation to improve, thinking maybe we were just bad at managing money." The doorbell rang before I could respond. It was Jane and David coming over for what had become our weekly family dinner, a new tradition born from the ashes of Eleanor's deception. "I brought the last box from Mom's house," Jane said, setting it down on our coffee table. "The cleanup crew found it in the attic." We gathered around as Mark opened it. Inside were dozens of birthday cards, each filled with Eleanor's elaborate lies about financial gifts and investments she'd never made. "Look at this one." David pulled out a card from 3 years ago. "Darling, the $50,000 I've invested in your future will be the foundation of your dreams." She wrote this the same month she took that cruise with victim number 4. She really believed her own lies, Jane said softly. "The detective said that's common with long-term con artists. They create such elaborate fantasies that they start living in them." Mark picked up another card, then suddenly laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. "You know what? This is actually liberating. All these years of feeling guilty for not being as successful as Mom made everyone think we were. The pressure to keep up appearances," David nodded. "The constant comparisons to imaginary investments," Jane added. "It was all fake," I finished. "We were measuring ourselves against a lie." The next day, we sat in the courthouse watching Eleanor accept her plea deal. She looked small in her navy suit. No designer labels now, her silver hair simply styled without her usual professional blow-up. When given the chance to address her victims and family, she turned to face us. "I convinced myself I was doing it for you," she said, her voice thin. "But I realize now I did it for myself, for the person I pretended to be." The judge sentenced her to 5 years, with potential early release based on good behavior and continued cooperation in recovering the stolen funds. As they led her away, she looked back one last time. "Happy birthday, darling," she called to Mark. "I'm sorry I ruined all of them." 6 months later, we celebrated Mark's next birthday at our home. No fancy restaurant, no elaborate gifts, no fictional financial windfalls. Just family, honest conversations, and a homemade cake. "I got the final credit report today," I told him as we cleaned up after the party. "Our debt consolidation plan is working. 2 more years and we'll be clear." He pulled me close. "You know what the best gift was? The truth. Even though it hurt, even though it changed everything. It set us free," I finished. That night, as we got ready for bed, Mark found one last birthday card from the box of Eleanor's lies. But instead of reading it, he tore it up. "I don't need fake promises anymore," he said. "I'd rather have real struggles than fake success." I thought about Eleanor in her prison cell, no longer able to maintain her elaborate fantasies. Sometimes the greatest gifts come in painful packages, the gift of truth, of clarity, of finally seeing things as they really are. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that while Eleanor's lies had funded a lifestyle, They cost her something far more valuable: the genuine love and trust of her family. Some debts, it turns out, can never be repaid.